once and for all, the Church of Jesus Christ was never a charity. How could the good news be a charity? It's not a charity. Now, people who don't understand will make it into a charity. But if you know how God expects you and I to respond, charity is optional. Participating with God when you've become aware is not. You may be seated. You know, I'm just going to keep telling you, maybe you'll get tired of hearing it, but I count the time that I'm able to stand here and be with you an honor and a privilege. I think that I'm pretty blessed to be able to talk to people about the grace of God. And every single week, I try to tell people about the grace of giving. Now, at some point, you know, I think at some point, even people who are a little bit hard of hearing will hear the repetition, and eventually it sinks in. I'm supposed to do something. There should be a response. You know, a lot of times in ministry, and I can't speak for all ministries, but from what I see, a lot of times people get really confused about what God says about giving versus what an entity or an individual says about giving. Now, I don't care if you want to argue, and many people do. They are anti-tithe people. They are anti, you know, they'll tell you every reason that there shouldn't be a tithe. But the one thing that they cannot escape from, and I don't care how you get to it, but this is just the way it is. And with God, He has a way of sifting it down so even the most hardheads or hard-headed folks can understand that God does indeed desire for us to respond. And the response isn't just with our mouths. If that was the only desired response, it would be a pretty cheap one. Why? Because we say things all the time, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the heart is backing the words like what used to be gold in Fort Knox. Doesn't mean that it's going to back up anything, just the noise that's coming out. This is why something in the heart must change that then makes the attitude towards the things of God something, as we might say, something that's desired, something that's pursued. But I have been, and I think I will always be, against those people who talk about giving, and they talk about money, and they leave out the most important part. You know, let me say it in the reverse. God doesn't want your money. He wants you. God does not want your money. He wants you. The Bible says you are bought and paid for with the price that is Jesus' precious blood. And if you can't figure out that something immensely great, more than you could ever repay, was done for you, stop arguing about what I call the penny-pinching people out there that argue, no tithe, no, that's legalism. Okay, tell me, what exactly do you profess to give to God? What? Your lint change, your pocket change, a little tip for God? Sorry, friend, but you're going to find in the big picture, through and through this book, that's not the way it works. God wants to know He's first in your life, and He's first in mine. And the way we demonstrate that, I'm presenting my entire being. So I always go back to the same scriptures. Romans 12, you are to present yourselves. I can't present you for you. You must do it for yourself. It's quite a shame that most of the things I've been exposed to in, we'll call it, the universe through technology, teaches nothing about what it means to actually give. Giving essentially isn't about what you have in your bank account. It is about a state of mind. It's about the way you see things through the lenses of Christ. And without those lenses, or without those glasses, without putting on the spectacles of Christ, what you see is you see the world as it is in its fallen state. You put on the spectacles of Christ, you see what Christ sees. And I'm actually going to get into this just a little bit in my message, so I don't really want to say too much more. But every Sunday, we do the same thing. I talk to you a little bit for a few minutes about why we do what we do, which unfortunately is not probably enough. I really should devote more time to explaining and teaching on the principles of giving biblically, God's way. But right now I'm telling you that this is for teaching you've received. So if you've been listening to me for 6 months, that's like saying 6 months of tuition. You figure out what that means to you. I know for me, I am a research person. That's what a Ph.D. is. It's essentially, someone who has the mind to do the research. And my mind will find places to look for information. What I find is that there's a lot of misinformation out there. There are a bazillion blogs of people who are experts on the minutia of nothing. And if you listen to them, that's probably what you'll get. So I don't want to say too much more except that when we take up the offering, it's because you have already received, not future. Like somebody said, well, I gave all this, so I'm entitled to future things. That doesn't work that way. And anybody that thinks that it works that way, you're a lunatic. I'm just going to say it as plainly so that there's no misunderstanding. It's for what you've received. How can you actually pay in advance for what you have not actually received? Makes no sense to me. But anyway, this is what we're going to do. So I'm going to have the ushers come, and we're going to take up an offering right now. It's offering time. You may be seated. Okay. So some of you have already figured out we're going to be discussing this subject for quite some time because it's been very neglected and it is immense, and that's putting it mildly. So this will be message 11 in our series. Today we will be in Matthew 25, beginning at verse 31, if you'd like to turn there. And as you turn there, I want to say a few words about what we're doing and how we're doing it and the slow pace that I've decided to take. There's no way that we can possibly understand this subject without, as I said, going through, and there has been a little bit of method to the madness here, but I'm trying to show sometimes something that will be a parallel, a confirmation, something that is essentially laying down repetition, which makes for sound doctrine. But I'm also trying to show a variation, we'll say, on the same theme, but sometimes with nuances that are just straight there within the text. So let me start by saying that, and I will read the text, especially for those people who are listening by radio, who may be driving in their vehicles and cannot open their Bibles while they're driving. Although stranger things can happen here. But while you're doing that, and while you are turning to Matthew 25, and those of you who are trying to get your brains cleared, I want to tell you that this passage is probably the most misinterpreted. Folks who tend to gravitate towards, we'll call it what I've referenced, social gospel, love this passage because improperly understood, it gives credence to, we'll call them theological errors that people have then picked up as, that's what it says, therefore that's what it should mean. And I'll elaborate. So let me begin with reading the passage. And I should say, if you are following along, for those of you who are familiar or maybe not too familiar, we've been kind of touching on different areas through Matthew's gospel. Today I'm in Matthew 25, verse 31. When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory. And before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. Now it's kind of, it may seem irrelevant to you, but I had to know, because it's one of those minute things in the text. I've told you, when you see italics in your Bible, that's added by the translators. But I had to know if the text read his sheep. Because of the italics, it bothered me. So You can just scratch out the his, although it's implied in the text because whose would they be? But that's why it is italicized. It's not there in the original. It just divideth sheep from the goats, period, okay? And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. And then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, Come ye, blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. This is where we get a lot of interesting interpretation. So let me read through this portion. Jesus is speaking, and he says, For I was a hungered, and you gave me meat. I was thirsty, you gave me drink. I was a stranger, you took me in. Naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, you came unto me. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee a hungered and fed thee, or thirsty, and we gave thee drink? When saw we thee a stranger, and took thee in, or naked, and clothed thee? Or when saw we thee sick, or in prison, and came unto thee? And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. Then shall he say also unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was a hungered, and you gave me no meat, and I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink, and I was a stranger, and you took me not in, naked, and you clothed me not, sick and in prison, and you visited me not. Then shall they also answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee a hungered, or athirst, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister unto thee? Then shall he answer them, saying, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye did it not to one of the least of these, ye did it not to me. And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into life eternal. Now, the people who love these, what I've called social issues, they tend to make this passage, and you have to listen carefully to what I'm going to say. They like to make this passage in essence, justification by works. Now, let me set this straight, because if you're going to go down that pathway, you are essentially throwing out everything that Paul said. You are essentially throwing out everything that later writers such as Augustine and Luther said. But more importantly, you are twisting the essence of what Christ said. Now, it's going to be very subtle what I'm going to say. It's important that we pick up the subtlety, because this is what happens. Most people do not picture or pick up the subtlety, and they immediately think of it's ipso facto. Because I serve the poor, therefore I'm serving Christ. If that is your interpretation, you have just absolutely missed everything that Christ said. Now, I'm curious to know, how many of you have been taught that interpretation? Probably. Truth be told, probably most of you have heard it taught that way. That's not what it means. And I'm going to be very clear about why I'm saying this whole passage is dealing with future judgment. That is the focus, not whether you served the poor and the needy. It's dealing with future judgment. And this is why I said this, a very subtle thing I'm going to say, and then I want us to latch on to this. To be in Christ and to have the mind of Christ means I look on other human beings just as Christ did. Now, I don't do what Christ did, that saying, what would Jesus do, that kind of, I'm glad that came and went away, because only Jesus could do what Jesus could do. But if you were asking the essence of this, to be in Christ, to have the mind of Christ, is indeed to look on others with compassion, to be merciful. And many times over the Bible says, be merciful as your Father, your Heavenly Father is merciful, be merciful. There are many times we read about, and I've done this before, our interfacing or interaction, our communications horizontally, what happens to our fellow man, and our relationship Godward. Now, unfortunately, people take this passage, and the same people who would take this passage will also take James and say, well, if you don't have works along with your faith, and they'll go down that pathway. Now, this particular passage is not saying if you do all of these things, and if you feed the poor, and if you do all of these good benevolent things, that somehow you're doing them unto Christ. Yes, there's a passage that says, unto the least of these, as a cup of cold water, unto the least of these if you're doing it. But what is being pictured here must be put in perspective and must be taken in context. Anything else apart from that is text out of context, and that is error. And I get very, it's mostly with pastors and those who are supposedly trying to teach. I get very angry with those people because what it does is it essentially, the way it's usually explained, that if you're not doing these things, somehow you're not right with God. And hence now we begin this whole passage of how to figure out how to do these works, if you will. No, the passage is not suggesting that. And I want you to harness your brain with me, because it's actually pretty straightforward, but you got to know what to highlight to make sure we're looking at the right focus. And the focus is not on the poor. Please get this straight. You know, I hear all these people in churches that say, well, what programs do you do? Do you do any programs? Do you feed people? Do you do this? Listen, once and for all, the Church of Jesus Christ was never a charity. How could the good news be a charity? It's not a charity. Now, people who don't understand will make it into a charity. But if you know how God expects you and I to respond, charity is optional. Participating with God when you've become aware is not. So just start right there. Now, this is what's great. If you want to make some notes here, that's why I said focus on what is being said. So the first thing we can know, something from this text, that's in verse 31. In verse 31, it says, when the Son of Man shall come in his glory. So what should we say here? Son of Man will return. That's number one, okay? His coming will denote the end of human history as we know it, as we have been recording it. And this passage, and I'm going to show you this, speaks more to the effect of how or what was done with the time. You know that passage out of Ephesians I often quote, Paul saying, redeeming the time, redeem the time. This is the implication of the subtext. So first there is the judgment of all nations. And when I say this, I pray that you understand what I mean when I say this. This will be a time of no excuses and no exceptions. There will be no possibility when Jesus comes, when he returns, and it says, then he shall sit upon the throne of his glory, and before him shall be gathered all nations. Verse 32. All, not some, not a few, all nations. So, Son of Man will return, all nations are gathered in front of him. This is what's scary. I bet if I went into any other church, any other place, and started asking people about this subject, they say, it doesn't matter. So far away. Not in my time. I don't have to think about it. There's nothing I need to worry about. Okay, whatever you say. I'm not going to argue with you. All right. Something else we're told there in verse 31. The Son of Man will return. All nations will stand in front of him. But I'm going to go back and right here in verse 31. He won't be alone. There will be a heavenly host with Jesus, where it says all the holy angels with him. So this is going to be quite a spectacle. We've got the return of the Son of Man sitting upon the throne, all the nations gathered in front of him, the heavenly host around him. So now read on. It says, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. So the work that he's going to do here, although your King James says separate, correct? That's the one word that I'm highlighting. It says separate. But essentially here, there's something happening. And this, when it says separate, judgment is beginning. the separation process to begin to judge. But don't think that Jesus is making up his mind at the last, because he's not. And the text also tells us that too. He has already determined something. The determination has been made, something that was prepared for those righteous, those blessed by the Father, before the foundation of the world. So it's not, I don't want people to think of this as in, well, is there time for me now to do something? Well, I suppose you can always change your mind. That's what the true meaning of repentance is, to change from going your way to following him. There's always time for that. But we're talking about when the Son of Man, when Jesus comes, what will happen? Now, I'm asking you something. It says quite clearly here that he's going to separate the sheep from the goats. This is very much like the wheat and the tares, because the wheat and the tares grew together. You remember, until harvest, and then the reapers, who were the angels, came. They took the tares to be burned up and the wheat into the barn. Here we have, well, if it's really an elaboration, and I'm not quite sure that it's really an elaboration on the parable we visited last week, but here's something quite clear. He shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. And we know the right hand of God is the place of favor, the place of power. But in this case, we now have a division. We have separation and judgment that has occurred essentially within this verse. Then shall the king say unto them in his right hand, and here's where we can begin to see some interesting things being said here. So, verse 34, Christ's words, come ye blessed of my Father. Now, it doesn't say here, come ye perfect people. It doesn't say here, come people who never smoked, never drank, never cussed, never breathed, never did anything wrong. It says, come ye blessed of my Father. So, if there's ever a time to see where there's an invitation, the invitation comes by the mouth of the one who is able. I'm not able to make an invitation to you. This is why I'm going to keep repeating this. Why I don't do altar calls. I cannot invite you. I could with my mouth say, would you, could you, may you, would you, whatever. But only the one who has all authority to say, come, can actually do this, speak one word, come, and this is your reaction. Yes, Lord. Now, you know, this is what I love about the people listening to me. I think most of the people listening to me are thinking people, and at least I'm hoping some of the new folks listening, I hope that you're tired of being talked to like somehow you're of a lesser intelligence. The reality is that what is so crystal clear here, Christ has already essentially done the sorting out. So when people say, oh, we're going to sort out things, they're sorting out nothing. They're sorting out that they're an idiot. That's all they're sorting out. So the invitation by the mouth of the Lord, and take a look when it says, ye blessed of my Father. Who is invited to come? Blessed of my Father. Again, this is speaking of an eternal. This has nothing to do right now. When you start at verse 35 and go all the way through reading until the 45th and 46th verse, you can see he's making a contrast between two groups of people. He's not saying, this you must go and do. He says, this is my observation of you. And when he's looking at this group of people he calls blessed of my Father, versus those that he's going to refer to as cursed, he's looking at their functioning as they functioned, as they were here, as people who had the ability to know, because they had either heard or in our case we have read. It is the treatment of your fellow man, but for this reason, and I'm going to give you a few, but for this reason I put first, the book of Hebrews talks about paying attention to strangers. Why? Because you might be entertaining angels, I think the scripture says unawares, right? We don't know a lot of times who we are helping, who we're talking to. And in fact, I think a lot of good comes out of looking around, and it's, by the way, birthed out of this mindset. You look around and you can see people trying to, they're on street corners, right? People who are trying to panhandle, and here, I'm poor, and the signs that say, beer please, or whatever it is that they're asking for. And this is the thing that troubles people. Well, should I give to those people? Are they legitimately? Let me see your hands. How many of you have grappled with this question? Show me your hands. That's almost all of you. And you know why it's a problem for us? It's a problem for us because it's now become, whereas maybe 50 years ago, people went out, and if you had to beg, the person that was out there really had to beg. They really were poor and destitute and needed the money. Versus, I've told you the story about the lady that I used to see in Pasadena all the time with her worn out, puffed quilted jacket, pushing her aluminum 4 wheels on the cart with all the bags in it. And I happened to get in line in the coffee shop behind her, and she whipped out a stack of bills, and on the top she had a platinum American Express card. And I was thinking, don't leave home without it, lady. You never know. This is the problem. It's very hard, because if you're like me, I'm looking, in the moment that I'm seeing this thing, I want to do something, but then you vacillate. Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. A lot of times, the more important thing is that you understand Christ sees your heart and sees the mind that you have. It's the mind of Christ. It's not the natural mind. It's the mind of Christ that looks on other people and says, oh, God, have mercy, or whatever deeds you're going to do. But don't make the mistake of thinking that this text is talking about get out there and feed the poor and clothe the poor. And I remember going into the prisons, and this was a text that people would say all the time. I was in prison, you came to visit me. In fact, that was a favorite thing both of chaplains and of inmates. But that's not the implication, and that's not the main meaning of the text. The main meaning of the text isn't get out and do something. I'm going to say what Martin Luther said, and I'm going to say it in my way because I think it'll be a little bit more understandable. Someone who has opened up their heart and is faithing and trusting Christ, when I say this, listen carefully. Good works will come, but they're not works to make it in. They're good works according to your faith in Christ. They're looking, seeing, desiring to help, not because you think, oh, that's going to get me in. It's a slippery slope when people start talking about works and doing, which is a big problem, because most people will then start to do the works that they think then substitute having a relationship and faith with the living God. So there's a lot of complications here, but let's go back and see what's said here. So this first group of people, and he's juxtaposing. Remember, I always say 2 groups of people. He's juxtaposing them. So when he says, hungered, I was hungry, you gave me to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. Stranger, you took me in. Naked, you clothed me. Sick, you visited me. In prison, you came to me. This is what he says. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, when did we see you hungry and feed you? Or when were you thirsty and we gave you to drink? When saw we thee as a stranger and took you in, or naked, or that we clothed you? Or when did we see you sick or in prison? When did we come unto you? And the king shall answer and say unto them, verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto the least of my, what does it say? Brethren. Can you say it louder? Brethren. Okay. You have done it unto me. This opens up the great dialogue. The people who want to say, okay, who are my brethren? Because I've dealt with this before when I've taught on the message on forgiveness, and it says the same thing. Your brethren. So let's clear up this one passage right here. Specifically in the text, brethren must be understood this way, first and foremost. You remember when Jesus is talking to a group of people, and his mother and his whole family appear, and they're trying to tell him, Jesus, look, your mother and your family are there. And he says, these are not my family, but he points to his disciples and he says, these are my family, those that do the will of the Father. And what is he speaking about? Trusting God, taking him at his word, basically faithing. So we're not talking about blood brothers per se, but we're talking about blood brothers in Christ. If that makes any sense, the subtle nuance there is we're connected by Christ's blood. That's what makes us brethren. So the first meaning must be understood this way. Inasmuch as you've done it unto the least of these my brethren, you have done it unto me. So Jesus is saying, essentially, in your lifetime, remember, this is a time of judgment. This is not the time of sorting out per se, it's the time of judgment. So what Jesus is summing up to this group is when you saw these things and took action, my brethren. Who are my brethren? Those that do the will of the Father, those that are trusting. This opens up another question that people ask. Well, can people be doing the will of the Father and not understand or know the book? And the answer is, I'm sorry to tell you, no. You can't. There's no way. You'd be guessing, and that's not what our faith is about. We're not some experiment. We're not guessing. We're not, close is kind of good enough, God, right? Don't think so. So these are the juxtaposed. And then he also says to those on his left. So let's put these as a distinction between the two groups of people, because this is what this text must be seen for, the two groups of people. So Son of Man will return, all nations, and where it says here, come, blessed of my Father, it equally, to the other side, verse 41, says, depart. Depart from me. And what does he call those people? Cursed, not blessed. So you can definitely see we're talking about the juxtaposition of two groups of people. We're not talking about the doers that did so they could do to get in versus those that didn't and they won't. We're talking about two groups of people and their understanding of their servitude towards Christ and their relation to their fellow man. That's all that's being said, but in the big picture, it's being looked at as a time when basically Jesus says, I'm going to separate these, and this is what's going to happen. Come, ye blessed of my Father, that's your place, and you who were refusing, depart from me, ye cursed. So we definitely have, the text shows us definitely two sides to this. For those that are faithful, it says a place. For those that are faithful, let me go back to the text. When he says here, the kingdom, inherit the kingdom prepared for you. So go back to black here. Inherit kingdom. Keywords, prepared for you. I think that says it enough. Versus those that they now share their lot with the following, into everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. So that second group of people essentially is sharing or partaking in what was actually prepared for the devil and his angels. Everlasting fire. Now I ask you a question now, because I think I can let the text speak for itself. Do you see anywhere where there's a temporary place that you can get a little heated up, a little sizzled, and maybe a little de-drossified so that you can make the leap over onto the other side? Do you see it anywhere? No. I don't either. Now, this is why I do what I do. Is there'll be people out there who, like me, come from a Catholic background, and they'll say, well, no, that's not what I've been taught. I'm not interested in what you've been taught. I'm only interested in what's in this book, okay? And I don't care if you're Catholic or Protestant, you have to deal with what's in here, not with what somebody said. This is what you need to think over here, which has no part in this book. And why am I making this such a big deal? Why? Because it's important to understand what this second group of people, read verse 46, and these shall go away into everlasting punishment. So what is prepared for these folks? Punishment, everlasting punishment. Not even some temporary form, everlasting punishment. So there we have a very clear picture of what Christ is looking at. See, I noticed something. Christ isn't looking at this and saying, was Melissa Scott perfect? I want you to analyze this text, and I want you to put yourself standing essentially between two piles or a chasm between two sides, if you will, of some gully. You're standing right in the middle. This isn't a place where in the moment Jesus says, let's decide in the moment. Why? Because essentially because of free will, I made those decisions through the course of my lifetime. That's a little bit scary. So what does somebody do who is looking at this and saying, my God, I mean, if this is true, that's pretty frightening, that in that moment, it's not as though I'm going to stand and I'm going to make an excuse for my behavior. See, the wonderful thing about what this says, it's wonderful, but it's also scary. This will be a time, no excuses, none. Saying, but God will not work. This is a time where if you really want to kind of look at this properly, God's wrath, God's ultimate displeasure will be meted out to those, and you say, well, that's unfair. What did the goats do? Well, what did the tares do? And if you want to keep going down this pathway, it's imperative to see that essentially it is the work of these individuals in their lifetime and their attitude towards their fellow man. This passage is not advocating, not saying that the church should now become a charity. Jesus said, the poor you'll have with you always. He said that in context, so I should be clear, of the woman putting that expensive oil on him, and the disciples were outraged and had indignation at that. And he said, I won't always be with you. The poor you'll always have with you. They said, this could have been sold and given to the poor. So this text here, what I want to keep emphasizing is it's essentially Jesus' final words to his disciples in Matthew's gospel regarding judgment. It's essentially the summation right here before, if you read, essentially the rest of this is Jesus' arrest and his crucifixion, and pretty much the last word from his mouth in Matthew's gospel about the fate of these two groups of people. So what I want to kind of go back a little bit and say a few words as I've put these, and I probably have more. In fact, I should add some words here so that we can look at them. And if there is eternal or everlasting punishment for those goats, the sheep get their reward. We can talk about each side of the equation. In verse 46 where it says, for those that'll go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into life eternal. So it definitely spells out for you two groups of people. Christ will be judging and separating out. And it is important when we look at this to understand who is being judged. The key is all nations. There's a lot of confusion. People talk about who will be judged, all nations. Well, what about the believers in Christ? Different story. Even though this passage talks about sheep and goat, and supposedly the followers of Christ are represented in the sheep. But what I'm trying to say here is it is important to understand when people are trying to get an idea of where they're going, their ultimate destiny, don't try and imagine something that you have created in your mind. You've got to imagine that everything that your life has been to this moment in time, all being, sorry, you might not like this, it's all being written down. I don't like it either. It's all being written down somewhere. Some damn angel up there is going, yeah, get more paper, yeah, right? So this should not produce fear. This shouldn't produce, wow, I've lived such a bad life, so there's no hope for me. I think we're going to be surprised about something. This is why the passages like this are very important. I think we're going to be surprised that the people that built themselves up as, I was out there working for the Lord, and I was feeding the homeless, and I was clothing, and I was doing, and I was working for the Lord. I think we'll be surprised there's going to be a lot of people who we thought are the heroes of Christianity who will not be there with us. And there'll be a lot of people who will be pleasantly surprised to know that they're not hell-bound and that God, in their humble humility, God raised them up. You remember there's that wonderful parable and passage about taking the lower seat, not taking the best and highest seat. You remember that passage? Well, it's kind of like that. I think that the people who walk around like the one who said, Lord, be merciful to me, a sinner. Not, I thank my God, I'm not like so-and-so, but the one that's got the attitude that's right with God, even though maybe my life was a train wreck. God looking on saying, oh God, I can't believe it, not again. But he also says, but I know that she's not perfect, and I know she's going to make mistakes, and she's going to continue making, but where is her heart? Is her heart towards me? Is her heart looking to me, trusting me? These are the things that this passage should bring to the surface, not, oh, I better get busy and roll up my sleeves and get out there and start working. It has nothing to do with that. Even though, as I've said, and I just want to keep repeating this because it's a place where people will either take the license to say, I faith, therefore, essentially, I've done this before, I faith, so I sit on my hands and I do nothing. There's those people. I have faith. I saw this a lot, and I hate to say it like this, but I saw this a lot. Probably right after Dr. Scott died, when I was talking to people and saying, you know, I need your help to rebuild the ministry. Well, I trust Christ for my salvation, but I'm not going to go and help you do anything because we're not supposed to do that. Who said that? See, people are very confused, each and every one of us. If you've been given the light and you come in contact with somebody that is not light, or you can take any scenario, each person, as they have received, they have that responsibility. We can rationalize and say, oh, that makes me uncomfortable, and I don't like that. And I've told you I'm not a proselytizer. I don't want to try and convert people and win them to Christ. But if somebody asks me, you better believe I'm going to be there telling you exactly what this book says. Not my opinion. My opinion's not going to save you, but what's in the book. And part of the problem, and this is really the nubbin of it all, is without understanding passages like this properly, you get schools of people that will go out and, well, we're supposed to go and visit people in prison, so therefore I go and I do prison ministry, or I have to feed people, or I've got to clothe people. I've got to be doing something. Now, let's take a look at the life of Christ. Did Christ do a lot of things? He did. He healed people. He pulled money out of a fish's mouth. He fed people. He did a lot of amazing things. But Jesus is Jesus. Let's get that straight too. And I'm not Jesus, and neither are you. And to add to that, the thing that people always leave out is, although we know that Jesus descended, he came down, he condescended to us, but what does Paul say? Though rich, he became poor for our sakes. So when we talk about Christ and his disciples, what does Jesus say? The Son of Man doesn't even have a place to lay his head. So all these people who want to go out there and start feeding and doing, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing to do in society, but don't make it saving part of your salvation. It is not, it will never be. But understand what I am saying. This idea that we can somehow do. We do this. And you know, the question's always asked me, what do you do? What is your outreach? What are the programs you do? Well, you're looking at the program, okay? It's me. The other thing I want to talk about in this passage is the nature, which I touched on a little bit, of the separation that's being described. Just as the wheat and the tares, it is final. Tares are burned up, wheat is put in the barn. The separation here is final as well. Now, what if somebody said, well, what am I supposed to do right now? I feel that I may be more goat than sheep, or more tare than wheat. I told you the story about Merle Haggard. Merle Haggard came, he was visiting with Dr. Scott, and I remember we were sitting downstairs in the dining room of the cathedral, and he said to Dr. Scott, you know, I haven't been a very good child of God. I've been drifting away from God for a long time, and God must be really displeased with me about that. And I remember thinking to myself, just the very fact that he was aware that he wasn't as close as he thinks he used to be is the greatest sign for the child of God. The fact that you're even aware says God's not done with you. He hasn't abandoned you. He hasn't left you. The fact that you even care about it. The fact that I'm standing here right now and I'm talking to at least maybe 50% of this room or 50% of the people in the sound of my voice, that after I just said what I said about this passage are going, holy crap. And maybe depends. On what you say. That depends too. Now, for those of us who are not afraid, today is a wonderful day. You know, for people who are hearing this and it's not a message necessarily of comfort to you, today's a great day because it is a day to recognize. No one knows. I don't know how much time I have ahead of me. You don't know how much time you have ahead of you. But today's a wonderful day to look at this passage and say, yes, Christ sees everything that I do. He sees the good. He sees the bad. He sees the ugly. He sees when I've had opportunities and I turn away from them. He sees everything. But the greatest thing that's seen in this is my heart and your heart. So when you say, well, I've passed by many opportunities because I just wasn't sure that it was the right opportunity, that's conviction speaking to your heart. That's not some guilt trip in your mind. That's conviction saying, that was an opportunity that I didn't take. I'll take the next one. And be committed about it. Take the next opportunity. Make it an opportunity of faith. It will never be an opportunity of works. Never. It can never be that. We are not saved by works. Finally, let me say this on this passage, and then I think I'm pretty much done. You'll notice something. Both of these camps, it's Christ that makes the division and the distinction. It's Christ that is essentially, you're here and you're here. But the tools in my lifetime, this is that area I tell you, always be careful when you tread through here because the people who are Calvinists will say, wait a minute, right? It's not all wound up for me. If it was all wound up for me and I can just let it all unwind, and that would mean that I could never mess up either, in which I do all the time, and you do too, if we're honest with ourselves. So the reality must be said here that when, from the foundations of the world, when my name was called, when your name was spoken, and a place was prepared for you and for me, God knew the possibility and the probability because of the gift that he gave us in free will. Now, this is the weirdest thing I've probably ever said to you, but it's one of those things I think it'll stay with all of us. You remember olden days, I'm dating myself and probably dating most of the people listening to me. No, I don't mean that I'm dating you, I mean. But somebody will take that and twist it, it's guaranteed, so just bear with me. Pinball machines, you remember pinball machines, right? So what was the goal? To get the ball, to launch the ball off, to get it to go to hit all the buzzers, to get the most points, and then whoever gets the highest score wins. But you've got to maneuver the thing, and it's kind of ridiculous. I said it's a little bit crazy analogy, but we're kind of like that, whatever metal that they used for the balls that were inside the machine being thrust out essentially into the world, and there's so many different pathways to take and paddles to knock us this way and that way and guide us if we so choose to look at them as guiding, but they can also be distractions. Those same paddles can be used to get us off the path and get us outside of the realm to lose focus. So the choice still comes back to me. Am I going to be focused? Am I going to stay the course? Am I focused? Although the initiative had to start with him, but along the way, I can lose my focus, and I can lose my way. I can get distracted. I can get taken off the course I'm supposed to be on. But all this is to say, God knows my frame. And let me speak for me. I can't speak for you. It works better if you take what I'm going to say and just make it for yourself, personal to you. God knows my frame. He knows that God being the player, when he went to lob off me and the machine and send me out into the world, he knew all the hazards. They're all there. And the only thing that I have to be true to myself and to God about is understanding that the directions, they're here. And the directions are not a recipe for perfection. They're not a recipe for how to manufacture a Christian, but how to show me how to walk through my life with all of these different dynamics going on and still keep my focus. And that's why I said it's most important to understand the passage is about people and judgment, not about charitable activities. That is the course of our life. Two groups of people with their entire lives being looked at. Christ chose to highlight, we'll call it the need of humanity. Don't turn that into the text itself, but rather turn it into looking at yourself. Don't look at others. It's not your job to look at others and say, well, what have they done? This is why when people send me letters or they want to ask me, what do you do exactly? Well, listen, what you see is what I'm doing, and anything else that you don't see is none of your business. It's God's business. It matters to him, and if he's pleased with it, that's all I care about. So let's not make this text into something it's not. And it should give us a little bit of guidance, okay? My guess is to those people that he's calling the righteous or blessed of the Father. Again, what do they have? Brethren. What do they have in common with other brethren? Now we're going to tie it all together, Christ. So don't ever make the mistake of saying that this text can be interpreted in any other way apart from Christ. It cannot. And it is not designed in any way, shape, or form, except, I think, for most of us, to be jarred out of our stupor. That there's still a lot of time left to act in faith. There's still a lot of opportunities of faith. They come, first and foremost, by understanding what the will of God is. And the will of God in this case is simply to trust him, take him at his word. When he said, it is finished, that it's actually finished, that when he said, I will have life eternal, that I will have life eternal. And when he said, he goes and he is going to prepare a place for me, which is the same thing as being said here, kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world, I will take him at his word and understand that Christ, when he says something, it's for me to stand on that word and say, amen. Now, maybe, I'm going to speak for me, maybe in my lifetime, looking back at my life, I haven't been as charitable or as kind. Maybe I didn't feed people. Maybe I didn't clothe people. Maybe I didn't a lot of things. I think a lot of opportunities that people would put as the social stamp. But with eyes fixed in the proper place now, I'm looking at Christ and I'm thinking to myself, if this is something that Christ would do for others, I'm looking unto him. He is the way for me. So if I understand the text for me, it is essentially an assessment of how I have responded to Christ in my lifetime, not what I have done. When you're clear on that, you have a clear-cut pathway. The one thing that is expected, and I keep saying this every single week, faith takes you in, faith will take you home. There's never going to be a time, ever, where I'm going to say to you, well, you better get out there and you better start doing and you better start shoveling and cleaning and whatever else you need to do. It's not going to help. It's not going to, it's anything that is not brought by God through you to work his good is going to be put in the camp of filthy rags. Your righteousness, the thing you thought, versus simply just trusting him. So that's what I'm saying to you. And if we still weren't clear that there is a clear design destiny for two groups of people, and there are only two groups of people, not within Christianity, but the nations. There's only two groups, those that will respond and those that will reject. I would say simply this. The fact that Jesus woke me up, that he opened my eyes, that he gave me the ability to hear and the desire to know. And people say, oh, we have miracles in this ministry. You know, you hear about all these different ministries where it's a miracle ministry. This is a miracle ministry, but not, I don't need some special thing. I don't need arms to grow. Now, that'd be wonderful if it happened. Or somebody who's blind to receive their sight. That'd be great. But the miracles that happen are turning from the individual filled with darkness to the individual filled with Christ's light. That's the miracle. And those miracles happen all the day long. He's constantly doing those. He's constantly reaching in. And like in the book of Acts where it says, and he added to the church such as should be saved, he's still adding to the church. Don't let ideas, propaganda, or any of this type of, well, your church is not doing, so it must not be a good church. Let me ask you a question. What's more important, listening to the master and understanding what he wants and desires of you, or getting out and being busy? I think you've answered the question. So, because you've answered the question, that's my message. Now, I know the thinking people out there will say, well, you haven't talked much about hell. Well, this passage actually is the first passage that we've dealt with that gives you an insight into some of the meanings that will be tied in once I start teaching on hell. I think I'm still trying to get most of us to look at heaven before we look at hell. But this text we just looked at today, you can glean a lot from that in terms of what it says by eternal punishment or everlasting punishment. All the descriptions in there, you can go in and read and at least start to get a little bit of detail on that other place that we've kind of been navigating around. So hopefully the next message will start to bring clarity to both sides. And as we navigate this very large subject, I'm hoping that more and more people who start listening, if you were listening today and you haven't heard the 10 messages that came before, I highly urge you to try and tune in either to the home website. The series will be replaying on a few of the different networks. I really urge you to tune in and listen to the replay of these messages so that the details, even though some of them are smaller, get repeated. That's how you'll start to retain a lot of the details, the smaller things that are said. But this is by no means a small subject. So hopefully we'll keep going, and a lot to say. We're certainly not done. You've been watching me, Pastor Melissa Scott, live from Glendale, California at Faith Center. If you would like to attend the service with us Sunday morning at 11 a.m., simply call 1-800-338-3030 to receive your pass. If you'd like more teaching and you'd like to go straight to our website, the address is www.pastormelissascott.com.